it's Dan. Welcome back. Kind of in line with my channel theory that I don't really curate content. I'm pretty much just filming myself doing what I'm doing anyway and then throwing it out there. See, there's no scripts here. Uh, I had decided at the end of the Varangian video that I really wasn't happy with the banner that you see within that tutorial. I think that it's kind of modern. You can actually see that, or maybe you don't notice, but I've made some subtle changes to it since that video, and I'm still just not happy with it. And I think part of the problem with this one specifically is I think it looks too modern, and so I'm going to redo this banner. And then I was starting to think, well, my other two Dark Age units, my Yams Vikings and my Huskarls, have standards that I'm reasonably happy with. The one in the middle, this is a print that I found online, so I printed this out and then used that, and then this one is a Little Big Men Studios banner. The issue I have with them though is this one, the print quality is not great, and I don't like that I've got, in this case, three different banners that are three different styles. One is painted by me, one is printed, and one is professionally done by Little Big Men Studios. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to redo all three banners, and because my how to make paper banners tutorial video is one of the oldest videos on this channel. In fact, I think it's only like the second tutorial video I ever did. Like, the format was completely different, the camera angle was totally different. I thought, well, let's just go ahead and film myself doing it while I'm doing it anyway. So what I've done, I'm gonna go through the process here in a moment. But what I've done is I've made up three banners, and you can do this any way you like. I recommend you use just regular printer paper, and so you could certainly print off some banners and use them that way if you like. As I said, I did that with this one here. I'm just not happy with the print quality. So that is definitely a way to go if you have access to a printer. But all I've done here is I've stenciled out the designs that I wanted. And just took some simple measurements of, how tall is the banner pole, and then using a ruler, just kind of mapped it out and then freehanded in some designs here. Using, interestingly, the acrylic markers that you see all these big, painting YouTube channels talking about. I've actually been using acrylic markers for years, painting rocks with my kids. Like, that's the application that I've found with acrylic markers. But I've also found that they're nice for filling in banners, because it's essentially paint. You just have a lot more control over it. So anyway, that's what I've done here is I've stenciled in some designs that I like for my Huskarls, my Yams Vikings, and then my Varangians down there too. So that's all you need to do is just stencil it out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these out just using some scissors, and I'm also going to cut the banners off of these. So if you are not happy seeing hobby stuff get undone, you should look away. But that's all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it off, and then you can kind of pry these off using an X-Acto knife. So I'll cut here. I'm going to go through. I'm going to do that for all three of these and cut out these three banners. Alright, so if you were not redoing work, as I am doing, this part wouldn't matter, but you can see what I've done is I've scraped the old paper banners off, just taking the side of an X-Acto knife and got up any glue or remnants of paper. Just want it to be smooth for the reapplication process. But as I said, if you are not undoing work you've already done, that part won't matter. But those banners are ready to go. You can see here I've cut out the three paper banners that I want to apply. And in this particular case, I have these little fins on all of them. I quite like that for Dark Age banners. I think that's really what was missing from my Varangian banner too. Speaking of it looking too modern. And so there's two ways you could do these. You could either have the fins sticking out on both sides, as I had with my previous banner, and I'm fishing through my trash over here just so I can show you what I'm talking about. So this, here is the remnants of what was actually a Little Big Men Studios banner, and you can see that it's really, really hard to get these to line up. So you can, and if you're good with if you're good with geometry, you could make it to where you've got fins on both sides that would then line up when you're gonna fold this flag around the banner pole. But as I said, I've done this lots and lots of times, and I find it's very difficult to get these to line up perfectly. So what I typically do instead is I'll just do on one side and I'll fill in these colors here. But I'll do it on one side, so that way you're really only folding over the rectangular piece. And then I'll apply some glue just to the flat bits there and get them to look wavy as well. I find that's a bit easier than trying to line up triangles. So otherwise, I've cut them out, and what we're going to do now is do a dry fit. So I'm not going to fold it, I'm going to bend it over without creasing it down the center, because once you create a crease here, it's very difficult to get that out. But I just want to make sure that it lines up properly. So again, I'm trying to get it square with the edge of the rectangle in this case, and you can see that's pretty good. So I'll check that out on this one too. If there's anything sticking out like here, I might trim a little bit just off of the top. But that's all you're going to do. You're going to look for any white areas sticking through from the other side of the unpainted part of the banner, and you just kind of trim accordingly to get the line up. But in this case, everything looks pretty good, to be honest with you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to affix the banner to the banner pole using super glue. So like this banner, or this flag, is going on this banner pole. And so what I'm going to do is, you don't want too much, but you're going to apply just a little bit of super glue down the banner pole. And then you're going to press it down and hold for, 5-10 seconds. And you can see then it sticks to the banner pole. We'll come back to him in a minute. I'm going to get some white glue, PVA glue. Elmer's glue here in the US is a fine brand. And then I'll take the first banner here. So I don't water it down much at all, because I've found that if I do that, it hypersaturates the paper and sometimes it'll tear. So I'm just gonna, on one side, just really thoroughly coat this. But what I'm then gonna do is push these two sides together. Make sure that it's lined up as best as you can. And then you can see there's a little gap right here. This is actually a trick that a viewer taught me on the last tutorial video I did, which is that you can take some tweezers and you can actually squeeze that part together. You can see that makes a much more close bond. You can do that on the bottom as well. So thanks to that viewer, because that's made this a much cooler process. Now, while it's still wet, you can see that it's lined up pretty perfectly. While it's still wet, I'm going to just kind of give it a little bit of a bend, right? Because I want it to look like it's flowing in the wind. You can make this as extreme or tame as you want it to be. I tend to kind of push it all the way in and then pull it back out a little bit. That tends to give me the movement that I'm looking for. Something like that's pretty good. Alright, they've been drying for a minute, and you can see they're pretty much dry. I've had some creasing happen here that I think must be the result of those acrylic markers, because it's never happened before with my regular paints. So just something to be aware of. Maybe don't use acrylic markers. As you can see, it didn't happen here with the white, because there was no acrylic marker paint there. Now, you could come through and clean some of this up too. I'm not, because I'm going to weather these, but that's something to be aware of. But you can see, I think they look pretty cool as they sit. Now, because my painting style is so gritty, and because these banners comparatively look kind of clean, I am going to go through and weather them. But at this point, if you wanted them to look just like this, I would recommend maybe just a matte varnish, and then you'd be done. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 3 different paints here. So I'm going to use a wash. So in this case it says Seraphim Sepia, but it's functionally Agrax Earthshade, just a dark brown wash. I've got some Dryad bark, but any nice dark brown color will do. And then I'm using the same base color that I use on the bases of all of my miniatures. And the combination of these 3 creates some nice weathering. So let me just pick one of them here. I'll just isolate one and work on that one together. So I'm going to start with the wash. So again, you can use whatever wash you're used to using. I use this mix, and what I'm going to do is I usually work like from the bottom of the banner is kind of where I'm focusing my attention. And keep some water nearby too, especially when you're talking about paper, because it might go on more heavily than you intend. So all I'm doing, as you can see, just kind of building it up. So I'm starting with the bottom of the banner, working my way up, and I tend to get pretty heavy-handed with it. You can be as heavy-handed or as light-handed as you'd like to be, but remember, you can always add more. So it's usually a good thing to do is keep it watered down and just add more accordingly if you want more. And you can see if it has come back in and like do some dots, how it kind of wicks its way up. So this is going to create a nice foundation color of, like tarnished fabric that we can then build up with the other colors that I had pointed out that will make them look more like mud, whereas this is more like long-term wear. And again, I'm not just covering the entire, I guess some of you might think I'm just covering the entire banner, but that's not my intent. I'm just going through and using some diluted wash, applying it in places that I think make sense in terms of like where the wear would be. So that's dried, or mostly dried anyway. So I'm going to take some of this dryad bark color. Again, you can use any kind of like really dark, rich brown color. Throw a little bit on my palette, a little bit of water. And we're going to do something similar here. I've actually switched to a slightly smaller brush, which gives me a bit more control. And it's not even watered down enough. So you want it to be almost like an ink consistency. Because what I'm going to do is come in and just add some accents. Not many, just to darken some areas to make it look like caked on mud. I actually think this is still not watered down enough. There we go. You want it to behave like milk. So I'm going through, I'm adding in some accents here. Just darkening a couple of areas down, focusing where I already had some of the previous wash color. Using this opportunity to cover up any areas that maybe still have some paint, or some that needed paint, I should say, like if there was some bare paper still exposed. But you can see this serves as almost like a low light. So while I've got this dry bark out, take a little bit more, throw it on my palette. I want it slightly watered down, but not much. So you should always have a sewing needle as part of your hobby supplies. You can see I've been using it recently for just what I'm about to show you, but also it's handy to have for unclogging paints. What I'm going to do is lay it down. You can actually see some of the splash from my previous work doing this. You want to take an old brush that has longer bristles, because the short ones won't work as well, and then getting kind of close to it, but you're going to see I'm going to run it against this pin, and you can see it's creating really fine particulates. Like I could never create anything that fine with a brush. And you can see it's shooting all the way up, and you can get as crazy with this as you want. But again, it's impossible to take it away once you've done it, so just bear that in mind. You can see it creates like specks of mud that just sort of enhance the ones that are already there. So again, I'm going to do it on the other side now too. Focusing again mostly on the bottom here, but some of them are going to shoot up toward the top of the banner too, which is good. We want all that. There. That's pretty cool. Alright, so once that's dried, you can see, I think that's already some pretty convincing weathering, just as it sits. I've done that with all three of the banners now. This one as well. And that would be fine. I do like to come in with, I mentioned the base color, like the color of your bases, right, which is territorial beige, in this case from Walmart Apple Barrel Paints. And in a similar way to what I do here, like with the shields, you can see I've done a kind of like a dusting I like to do something similar on the very, very bottom of the banners. So I'm going to take some of that territorial beige color just to add what looks like a little bit of fresh dirt. And you don't have to do this at all. I think it's the end result is very subtle. And you got to be careful. This is actually usually the step where I tend to go overboard. Like if I feel the effect isn't strong enough, I just keep adding more. You can end up, taking over an entire banner. But like that's more what I'm talking about. Just kind of like pigmenting the furthest most parts of it. So as I said, I don't even think it's subtle. So I think that you can get away with not doing this at all. It shows up better here. You can see on like the darker ones how it has more of an impact. So I'm going to go through just sticking with like this bottom one, maybe a little bit of this one too, but again, this is suggesting that it's like dirt from the ground that they're walking on that's been kicking up as they've been walking. So I don't want it to go too far up the banner. You could then do that same effect that we just did with dark brown. You can take a little bit of this, and this you got to be so careful with. So again, it's almost worth testing on a like napkin nearby just to make sure you're not going to have a whole bunch of this shoot off. But again, want to get really close to it, and you can see just a little bit there on the bottom is what's been hit, and that's it. That's all I want. There you go. The same thing on this one. And on the other side. And there you go. All done. I've hit everything with a anti-shine matte varnish. I use Army Painter principally. I think the end result's pretty cool. So again, matte varnish just to seal everything in. It has the added benefit of hardening the paper just to make sure that it keeps its shape. But I find the weathering adds a lot. It takes it from being a like drawn banner to making it look like a more integrated part of the model, especially for like something like this where I feel that my art is very amateurish. So something like that wolf design I think looks a lot better when you're splattering mud on it, etc. So there you go. Anyway, I think it's very easy to do and very easy to, as we just saw, redo if you find that your banners aren't working as a cohesive army. So in fact, it's so easy that I just redid these two banners because I wasn't happy with them again. So it's really hard to stop. Appreciate you dropping by for this one, and until next time, happy gaming.